Hi folks, Huffin here with your Antifa News Briefa for August 17th, 2021. This one's about Joe Biden. The last one was about war doesn't work. Basically, I did a little analogy on war doesn't work based on a game called Win As Much As You Can. But this one's about the Joe Biden speech yesterday about the evacuation of Kabul and all the people storming the planes and the whole deal. War doesn't work is my big takeaway from it. Straight shooting Joe gave us some good points in what he said, and he even maybe said more than he meant to say. I think the ultimate conclusion, if you listen to that speech, it was a good speech. If you listen to that speech, the ultimate conclusion is war doesn't work. We have the most powerful military by far. The USA spends more on the military than the next 10 countries combined, and we've done that for decades. It's been by far the most expensive military, and we've never won a war. I mean, we never win wars anymore. I mean, I'm not saying that like I'm complaining. I'm saying that like the reality is you can't win war. And Joe Biden said some things in his speech. He said 10 years ago, like he said, the purpose of our war was to degrade Al-Qaeda and get Osama bin Laden in some way. And when they did that 10 years ago, you could say that was a good reason to start winding down the war, end the war. And they didn't do it. So he's kind of admitting right there that 10 years, meaning the end of his term with Obama and Trump's term, were unnecessary. They weren't useful. They were a needless expense and damages and lives. And it's a terrible tragedy, because war is a terrible tragedy. We're smarter than this now. If you had spent $1 trillion just paying off people in Afghanistan, then, you know, just paying them just to do something different, you would have eradicated the Taliban more that way, just by paying people to have a better life and just, you know, and having people enjoy a better life. See, yeah, this is better than the way things used to be. If you just gave out the money, it was $1 trillion or more they spent. I'm not complaining about the money. You know, print more. You know, it's not a big deal. What I'm saying is war doesn't work. We were there for 20 years, and when you leave, it immediately goes back as fast as it can to the way it was. It didn't work. It doesn't work. The way we're engaging in it, this game we're laying out, doesn't work. There's a line from Grandpa on The Simpsons. I just saw it last night where, you know, he's talking to an Iraq war veteran. He's like, you know, you guys are all whining, complaining. It's 125 degrees. America's goals are vague and incomprehensible. You know, that's kind of it. Like, they did supposedly have this goal, and then they met the goal, and then what have they been doing for the next 10 years? On top of that, it didn't take all that to meet that goal. I'm watching a Simca Jacobovich video where he points out that Osama bin Laden just understood being in a sanctuary city. And he tried to tell people this and tried to get the government to take this approach, to negotiate, to try to build contacts, to get him out of, because you had to be able to draw him out of a sanctuary city for the people to be able to turn on him, just according to their cultural rules. And he understood that. The thing about war not working, it goes deeper than just we failed in Afghanistan. War doesn't work, so you're not going to win. But losing in a shameful fashion, having this evacuation, this rapid evacuation, and having all these people under threat, you know, that doesn't show much for all the efforts that you put into the country. And they talk about, well, we shouldn't be nation building. No, we shouldn't be warring. It's not like nation building is the one place where war gets sidetracked. We shouldn't be warring at all. There's so many better ways to approach this. And we're going to have to be approaching those things into the future. It's pointless to spend all this money. It's not just pointless. It has a point to continue war, and that point is bad. It's like a bad drug addiction or something. We spread all these weapons out there. The last two big threats that we've identified or felt in America were the spread of ISIS, the rise and spread of ISIS, taking over places and taking weapons that we'd left in the country. And the same thing apparently with the re-rise of the Taliban. But I always want to point out they're retaking Kabul, they're retaking Afghanistan because they were the ones in power previously, the Taliban. I'm not making an excuse for them because when you look at the roots of that, the reason the Taliban were in power is because America gave them all the money, gave them all the weapons back in the 80s when they were fighting the Russians. America armed and created the Mujahideen. Ronald Reagan sponsored Osama bin Laden to go over to Afghanistan and start doing all this stuff to fight the Russians, to start spreading this militant jihadist. It's not Islam. That's not even Islam. It's a corruption of Islam. Just like Trumpism is a corruption of Christianity. And Christianity is a lot corrupt even before that. That's why Jesus told Judas, we're going to replace all of it with the Church of Judas. Read my book, The Book of Judas, about that. But it's serious. Like, we have to stop the war, which is evil in the world. That's been commanded and demanded of us. We actually have the power to do it now, and we have the perfect examples. When Joe Biden said in his speech that Afghanistan has been called the graveyard of empires, it's not like he was just, just the other day, he's like rubbing off a sign and he's like, well, this is the graveyard of empires? It's been called the graveyard of empires because, Russia and I guess other countries prior to that had spent a decade or more than a decade trying to go to war in Afghanistan and failing to do so. Now, these decades have all been in these later years when you might say, hey, there was a justification for this war and we won this war or something like that. But even against the Nazis came back and took over America and apparently Russia without firing a shot through Trump and Putin and Bolsonaro. They took over Brazil. Like, they did that without war. So war doesn't work. We need better approaches, better ideas. We need to spend our resources on better things. I say we repurpose the military from a aggressive thing to a green energy, convert things to green energy, because we need big teams of people to do that. Military's prepared to do that. Use the military to do that, like big public works projects. And rescue from natural disasters and stuff. If we all convert all of our militaries to that, every country doing that, what do we have to fight over? Like, we've learned recently, we need to work together and help each other. We don't need to be all uptight about national borders and what countries are, other than trying to have a good influence on each other. If we have to accept the Taliban now as the leaders of Afghanistan, if the best way to do it is to get on some type of terms with them to negotiate and try to have some type of influence that way, as Russia and China and some other countries already did. And to that point, isn't Karzai the guy who negotiated giving them all the weapons and stuff and just surrendering peacefully? Isn't he the old president that Bush put in office and kept in office for so long? So it seems kind of like their whole plan, like they just throw these weapons out there. They're saying we're at war with these people, but we're at war with them like a big game. Like, we got to give the bad guys there more weapons and, lay it out for them, so that they're a threat again, so that, it's just like this perpetuating cycle. So if you take it back to like the Tom Hanks movie, Charlie Wilson's War, he explained how these people gave the Taliban, the Mujahideen, all these weapons in order to fight the Russians at that time, just, again, to maintain some Cold War thing. Now the Russians are getting revenge, or Putin, I shouldn't blame the Russians. I'm sorry. But Putin is getting revenge on America by spreading Trump virus and all this stuff. And the rest of the world, he's killed millions in the world. Like, he's just new Hitler, along with Trump and Zuckerberg and Bolsonaro and Modi and everybody on that team. So Biden needs to shut that down. We need to stop war. Not just stop nation building wars, just stop war altogether. We don't need any of it. Nobody needs it. We can all progress beyond that. We've got this perfect lesson how it doesn't work. So let's not engage in it anymore. It's been pretty obvious to many people for a long time. And thanks to, I saw Representative Lee, who voted against the Afghanistan war in the first place, just now, making some of these points. And it's like, Biden is right when he says it would have been like this years ago, or it would have been like this in the future. So why didn't we just end years ago? Or why didn't we take a longer time when you were in power, before, we had a traitor take over who's doing things against America's interest, setting it up so it couldn't go well? Why didn't we try to end it? And you look bad passing it. passing it on. You don't want to pass it on to President Bernie. Hopefully he'll be next. But we don't need any more war. So let's use all those resources for something else. Thanks for watching. See you soon.